The battlefield was silent at first. Only the wind carried the smell of dust and burning metal. But silence never lasted long in this war. Far away, laser fire echoed across the ruins of a forgotten city. Broken towers lit up with flashes of red and blue. He moved carefully through the shadows, his boots crunching against shattered stone, his weapon ready in his hands. His name was Daniel, just one soldier among thousands, but tonight he felt very much alone. The human forces had been retreating for days, pushed back by an enemy they barely understood. The aliens were stronger, faster, and ruthless, yet Daniel believed there was still hope. He had always been stubborn like that, never giving up, never leaving someone behind. But when he reached the old courtyard of the broken city, he saw something that made him stop. There, under the broken arches, stood a woman. At first, she seemed human, her figure tall, her face half hidden by a hood. She was cornered by 3 alien soldiers, their rifles glowing with deadly energy. She looked helpless, no weapon in her hands, no place to run. Daniel's instincts took over before his mind could catch up. Without thinking, he ran forward, shouting to draw their fire. The aliens turned, their glowing eyes flashing with anger. One raised his weapon and fired. The laser shot cut through the night. Daniel pushed the woman aside and threw himself in front of her. The blast struck his chest armor, burning deep into his body. Pain exploded inside him. But he stayed on his feet long enough to return fire. His rifle roared. One alien fell. Another stumbled back in surprise. The third hissed in rage and aimed again. But by then the woman had moved. Her eyes flashed strangely in the dim light. Her hand raised with impossible speed. The alien soldier was thrown back as if struck by invisible force, crashing into the wall. Daniel collapsed to his knees. Struggling to breathe, the woman knelt beside him, her hands glowing faintly. Her touch was strange, warm, soothing, almost alive for a moment. Daniel thought he saw lines of light running across her skin, like hidden markings glowing beneath the surface. But his vision blurred, the pain pulling him down. "You are safe," she whispered, her voice soft yet powerful. "Do not fear." Daniel wanted to ask who she was, why she had such power. But the words never came. His body gave up. Darkness pulled him into unconsciousness. The last thing he saw was her face, calm and unshaken, not like any human he had ever known. When he woke again, he was lying in a quiet chamber. The walls were curved metal, humming softly with energy. He was no longer on the battlefield, no longer in the ruins. Instead, he lay on a small bed, his wounds bandaged and his chest strangely healed. His rifle rested against the wall, but his armor was gone. The woman stood nearby, watching him with sharp, unreadable eyes. Daniel tried to sit up, but pain shot through his chest. She stepped closer, placing her hand gently on his shoulder. "You should rest," she said, her tone firm yet almost kind. He frowned, confusion mixing with suspicion. Who are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. For a long moment she said nothing, only studied him as though weighing a choice. Finally she spoke. "Someone you should not have saved," she whispered. Her words were strange, carrying a heavy weight. Daniel stared at her, unsure what she meant. But something in her gaze told him she carried secrets far greater than he could imagine. He had risked his life for her without hesitation, never knowing who she truly was. And now, as the silence stretched between them, Daniel realized his life had changed forever. The war outside was brutal, but something about this woman told him a much greater story was waiting to be revealed, and deep inside, he felt the truth. His act of sacrifice had set in motion something far larger than himself. The night outside raged on, but in that quiet chamber, 2 strangers sat together, one human soldier who never gave up, and one mysterious woman whose true identity could shift the fate of entire worlds. Daniel lay in silence, staring at the curved ceiling above him. The strange hum of the chamber filled the air like a low song, soft and steady. His chest still ached from the laser wound, but the pain was weaker than it should have been. He touched the place where the blast had struck him, expecting to feel scorched flesh, yet the skin was smooth, warm, almost untouched. It made no sense. He should have been dead. The woman who had saved him stood across the room. Her back to him, she moved with calm grace, her hands working over a strange device glowing faintly with shifting colors. Her cloak hung loosely around her shoulders, and Daniel noticed again the faint shine beneath her skin, the marks that looked almost alive. He remembered the moment she had thrown the alien soldier without touching him. The power that had burst from her hand. No human could do that. No soldier he had ever met could heal wounds like this. He cleared his throat, his voice still weak but steady enough. "You saved me," he said quietly. She turned her head, her eyes sharp, as though every word carried weight. "I could not let you die," she replied, her tone even, yet something in it sounded more like duty than kindness. Daniel tried to sit up, ignoring the ache. "Who are you?" he asked again, firmer this time. The woman looked at him for a long moment, her gaze steady. Finally she answered, though not in the way he hoped. "You should not know me, soldier," she said. "It is safer for you if you remain blind to who I am." Her words only deepened the mystery. Daniel shook his head, frustration rising. "I don't care about safe," he said, his voice rough. "I took a blast for you without even thinking. I deserve to know why." Something flickered in her eyes, a mix of surprise and sorrow. For the first time, Daniel saw the weight she carried, the heaviness behind her calm mask. She stepped closer, her cloak shifting, and for a brief second he saw her hands clearly. The markings on her skin glowed faintly like flowing rivers of light, twisting in patterns that looked too perfect, too deliberate. They were not scars, not tattoos. They were alive. "You would call me different," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "I am not human." The words hung in the chamber like a storm ready to break. Daniel's chest tightened, though deep inside he had already guessed. Still, hearing it spoken changed everything. Not human, alien, yet she had the face, the form, the voice of a woman like any other. He swallowed hard, his instincts screaming at him. Humans were taught to fear aliens, to fight them, to destroy them before they destroyed Earth. But this woman had saved him, healed him, and stood before him not as an enemy, but as something else, something impossible. She turned away again, as though ashamed of what she was. "You should not have risked your life for me," she said softly. "My kind and your kind. We are not meant to stand together." Daniel pushed himself up despite the pain, his stubbornness rising like fire. "I don't care what you are," he said firmly. "You were about to die, and I couldn't just stand there and do nothing." The woman froze, her back still turned to him, her hands clenched tightly around the device she had been holding. Slowly, she spoke again, her voice quieter than before. "You do not understand, soldier. By saving me, you may have doomed yourself." Her words struck him like a blade. Doomed? Why? What did she mean? Before he could ask, the chamber lights flickered. A warning tone echoed through the room, sharp and urgent. She moved quickly, shutting down the device, her hood drawn back over her head. "They have found us," she said coldly. "We must leave now." Daniel's heart raced. "Who? The aliens?" he asked, his rifle already in his hands. But her silence told him the answer. Not just aliens, something worse, something that hunted her. She helped him to his feet despite his protest, her strength far greater than her frame. Suggested, as they moved through a hidden passage, Daniel couldn't stop the storm inside his mind. Who was she really? Why did she hide among ruins? Why did she carry powers that defied everything he knew? And most of all, what fate had. He tied himself to when he chose to save her. The night outside was darker than before, filled with distant fire and shadows that moved like predators. Daniel followed her steps, rifle ready, his heart uncertain. But one thought refused to leave him. This woman was not just different. She was dangerous, and yet, for reasons he could not explain, he could not abandon her. Something about her drew him closer, as if fate itself had decided their paths were now one. The night was heavy with silence as Daniel and the mysterious woman moved through the ruins. The city around them had once been alive, filled with light and voices, but now only broken towers and empty streets remained. Shadows stretched long under the pale moon, and every sound felt too loud, every step too risky. Daniel kept his rifle raised, his eyes scanning the darkness, but his thoughts were fixed on her. He could not stop wondering, who was she really, and why did her words carry such weight? They reached a hidden shelter carved deep into stone, a place forgotten by both humans and aliens. Inside, the woman finally let her hood fall, her face calm but her eyes troubled. Daniel sat down heavily, his chest still sore from the wound that should have killed him. She lit a small device that filled the room with faint blue light, its glow painting strange patterns across the walls. For a long moment, she said nothing, as though she was fighting a battle inside her own heart. Daniel broke the silence, his voice low but firm. "You keep telling me I should not have saved you," he said. "You keep saying I doomed myself, but I don't understand. Tell me why." Her gaze lifted to him, steady yet filled with sorrow. "You will not believe me," she whispered. "Try me," Daniel replied, his tone hard. "I've seen enough tonight to believe anything." Her lips pressed together as though she feared the truth. Finally, she took a deep breath and spoke. "My name is Selene," she said slowly, "and I am the rightful queen of a people your kind call enemies." The words struck Daniel harder than any laser blast. His hands tightened around his rifle, though he did not raise it. The aliens he had fought his whole life, their leader stood before him now, cloaked in human shape, yet her voice carried no pride, only a heavy sadness. Selene continued, her tone filled with quiet pain. "I was betrayed by my own blood," she said. "Those who feared me decided I must die, and so they sent hunters, assassins, armies, all to erase me from existence." Her eyes darkened as she remembered. "They will not stop until I am dead, for if I return, the war they began will end, and they do not wish for peace." Daniel's mind raced. He had been told aliens were united, ruthless, unstoppable. But this woman's story spoke of betrayal, politics, and factions tearing each other apart. It made them sound less like monsters and more like people, yet the danger she carried was clear. By saving her, he had stepped into a war within a war. Selene looked at him sharply, as if reading his doubt. "You think me dangerous," she said, her voice steady. "You are not wrong, soldier, but not for the reasons you believe." She lowered her eyes then, her voice softening. "Every step you take beside me paints a target on your back. My enemies will see you as my shield, my ally, and they will destroy you for it." Daniel leaned back, letting her words sink in. It was madness, he thought, pure madness, yet it felt no regret. He remembered the moment he threw himself before the laser, the choice he made without hesitation. That choice still felt right, even if the cost was high. "I don't care about their targets," he said firmly, his voice echoing in the chamber. "I'm already marked just for being human, so if they come for me, they'll find I won't fall easy." Selene studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You risk everything for someone you do not know," she said softly, almost as if to herself. "Why?" Daniel thought for a long moment before answering. "Because it's what I do," he said. "I don't leave people behind, doesn't matter who they are." Something flickered in her eyes then, not sorrow, not fear, but a spark of something rare, perhaps respect, perhaps trust, perhaps even hope. For a queen who had lost everything, this stubborn soldier's words carried more weight than he could imagine. But before the silence could grow deeper, a sudden tremor shook the ground. The walls quivered, dust falling from above. Daniel grabbed his rifle. Selene raised her glowing hands. From outside came the distant roar of engines, the sharp cries of alien hunters. They had found her again, faster than either expected. Selene turned to him, her voice urgent. "This is my curse," she said. "Where I walk, war follows." I am the queen they will not let live, and now you are bound to my fate." Daniel checked his weapon, his eyes hard with determination. "Then let's give them a fight they won't forget," he said, for the first time. Selene allowed herself a small smile, though it held no joy, only steel. Her dilemma was clear: to run and abandon the soldier who saved her, or to stand and risk the fragile chance of survival they both shared. But deep inside, she knew the truth. Her enemies had underestimated humans before, and this one soldier, reckless and brave, might be the only ally who could change everything. The shelter shook again as the roar of engines faded into the distance. Daniel leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his rifle steady in his hands. Selene stood close, her glowing markings dimming as she lowered her hands. For a moment, the world was silent again. The only sound was the echo of their own heartbeats. "They will not stop hunting me," she whispered, her voice low but heavy with certainty. "Every time I pause, they come. Every time I hide, they find me. This is the truth of my life." Daniel studied her, the faint blue light of the chamber casting shadows across her face. Her calm mask was still there, but he could see cracks now, the weight of fear, the burden of being hunted. She was not just a queen, not just a leader. She was a person who had lost everything, and for reasons he could not yet name, Daniel felt a strange pull toward her. "Then we keep moving," he said firmly. "You don't stop. You don't give them the chance. You fight back one step at a time." Selene tilted her head, as if trying to understand this human stubbornness. "You speak as if battle is your only language," she said quietly. Daniel gave a faint smile, though it did not reach his tired eyes. "It's not battle," he replied. "It's survival. I've seen too many wars, and the only ones still alive are the ones who refuse to give up." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was not empty. It was heavy with unspoken truths. Selene moved closer, kneeling by the fireless lamp, her eyes fixed on the patterns dancing across its surface. "My people were not always like this," she said at last, her voice softer now. "There was a time when we lived in peace, when we built instead of destroyed. When unity meant more than power." Daniel listened, surprised by the tone in her voice. It was not the tone of a queen speaking of glory. It was the tone of someone remembering a world long lost. "What happened?" he asked quietly, her hands clenched, the glowing lines along her skin flickering faintly. "Ambition," she whispered. "The hunger for power, the fear of losing control. It poisoned our hearts. Even those closest to me betrayed me. They decided that peace was weakness, and I was weakness, so they hunted me." Daniel looked at her, his jaw tight. "That's not weakness," he said. "That's leadership. Maybe they were afraid because they knew you were strong enough to change things." Selene's gaze lifted to his, and for the first time, her eyes softened. She studied him as though searching for the reason behind his words. "You are unlike most of your kind," she said slowly. "You see me not as an enemy, not as a monster, but as something more." Daniel shrugged, though his voice was steady. "I don't see monsters and leaders. I see people, some worth saving, some not. And when I see someone fighting to survive, I don't turn away." Her lips curved faintly, the shadow of a smile. It was not joy, but it was something human, something she thought she had lost. And in that brief moment, the space between queen and soldier felt smaller, but the connection was tested as the sound of distant voices echoed outside. Alien hunters moving again, searching through the ruins like wolves on a trail. Daniel raised his rifle, ready, but Selene placed her hand on his arm. "Not every fight is won with weapons," she whispered. Her touch lingered for a second longer than necessary, the warmth of her strange skin sending an unexpected shiver through him. Together, they moved deeper into the ruins, taking hidden paths only she seemed to know. Daniel's trust in her grew with each step, though part of him knew it was dangerous to trust an alien queen. Still, he could not deny the truth. She had healed him, protected him, and now walked beside him as though they were equals. Hours passed as they crossed through broken tunnels and silent streets. At one point, Celine stumbled, her strength faltering for just a moment. Daniel caught her before she could fall, his hand steady on her arm. For an instant, their eyes met, close enough for him to see the faint glow pulsing beneath her skin like veins of light. He did not pull away, and neither did she. "You should not risk yourself for me," she said softly. Though her voice lacked conviction, Daniel smirked. "Faintly, too late for that," he replied. "I already did, remember?" Her eyes lingered on him, and though she said nothing, the silence carried more than words. By dawn, they found another shelter, a collapsed transport hub, its underground chambers still intact. Celine sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her expression distant. Daniel sat opposite her, watching the faint glow of her markings as they pulsed slowly. There was still mystery around her, still danger in every step they took together. But he knew one thing for certain. He could no longer see her as just an alien queen. She was a person, fragile and strong, hunted and yet unbroken. And something inside him whispered that their bond, fragile as it was, would become their greatest weapon. For now they rested, but Daniel knew the storm was coming, and when it did, the connection forming between them might be the only thing standing against the darkness. The underground station was quiet, dust floating in the dim shafts of light that slipped through cracks above. Daniel checked his rifle again, his soldier's habit never allowing rest. Celine sat near the broken wall, her eyes half closed, the faint glow of her markings fading as she tried to recover her strength. For hours they had traveled through ruins, hunted and pursued, but for the first time there was a moment of peace. Yet Daniel felt unease, a pressure in his chest that had nothing to do with his wound. It was instinct, the same instinct that had kept him alive on countless battlefields. Peace was never real in war, it was only the pause before the storm. He moved through the tunnels, searching for supplies, and froze when he heard voices. They were human voices, sharp and tired, echoing through the empty halls. For a heartbeat, hope stirred in him. Survivors, soldiers from his unit perhaps. He followed the sound until he found them. 4 men in battered armor, weapons strapped to their backs, his squad, men he had thought dead or scattered. "Daniel," one of them called, eyes wide in disbelief. "Thought you were gone. We saw the blast take you." Relief surged through him, a rare warmth in the cold ruins. He embraced them quickly, his chest aching but his heart lighter. "I'm alive," he said simply, barely but alive. They asked questions fast, too fast. Where had he been? How had he survived? Who had helped him? Daniel hesitated, the weight of Celine's secret pressing against his tongue. He told them only half. The truth, that someone had saved him, that he had been hiding in the ruins. But even as he spoke, one of the men, Corporal Harris, studied him with eyes too sharp, too cold. Later, when Daniel led them back to the shelter, Celine stood as they entered. Her hood was drawn, her face calm but her body tense. The men froze at the sight of her, their eyes narrowing, their hands inching toward their weapons. Daniel quickly stepped forward, raising his hand. "She's with me," he said firmly. "She saved my life. She's no threat." But suspicion was a poison, and soldiers carried it easily. One of them muttered, "She doesn't look like us. Something's off." Another sneered. Glowing skin, strange eyes. "Daniel, what the hell have you brought with you?" Celine did not move, her silence stronger than any words. Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice sharp. "She's not the enemy," he said. "Trust me on this." But trust was fragile, and Harris was already stepping back, his hand pressing to the small unit on his wrist. Daniel's eyes caught the motion, his gut twisting. "Harris," he warned. "Don't." Too late. The signal was sent. The faint buzz of the transmitter carried through the air. Invisible but deadly, Celine's head turned sharply, her markings flaring bright. "They know," she whispered, her voice steady but cold. "They are coming." Daniel's heart sank as he realized the truth. Harris had betrayed them. The alien hunters, whoever was chasing Selene. He grabbed Harris by the collar, slamming him against the wall. "What did you do?" he shouted, rage burning in his chest. Harris's eyes held no shame, only fear and desperation. "You don't understand, Daniel," he spat. "If we hand her over, maybe they'll let us live. Maybe they'll stop burning our cities, maybe." Daniel's fist silenced the words, but the damage was already done outside. The ground trembled with the approach of engines, the hunters closing in fast. Selene stood tall now, her glow burning brighter, her eyes fierce. "They will kill you too," she told Harris coldly. "You are fools if you think betrayal buys mercy." Daniel released Harris, disgust clear in his eyes. "We have to move," he said to Selene, now, but the hunters were faster, their shadows already filling the tunnels, their weapons humming with deadly light. Blaster fire lit up the underground chamber, stone shattering, air thick with dust and smoke. Daniel pulled Selene behind cover, returning fire with sharp precision. His old squad scattered, some firing, others hesitating, confusion breaking them apart. In the chaos, Selene's power surged, her glowing hand sending a shockwave that threw hunters back. The force rattled the very walls, but it drained her, her body trembling with effort. Daniel caught her before she fell, his grip firm, his voice steady. "You're not alone," he told her. "Not anymore." But even as he spoke, more hunters poured in, their numbers overwhelming. Selene's strength faltered. Daniel's rifle ran hot, and in the smoke-filled chamber, betrayal's price became clear. The queen was captured, her arms bound by glowing restraints that dimmed her power. Daniel was thrown aside, his chest slamming into stone, his vision spinning. Through the haze he saw her face one last time, calm, unshaken, her eyes meeting his with silent promise. Then the hunters dragged her away, and darkness closed over him once more. Daniel woke to pain and silence. His head throbbed, his body heavy, the taste of blood in his mouth. The underground chamber was half destroyed. Walls cracked, smoke still curling from the blasts. Around him lay broken weapons, scattered gear, and the empty echo of footsteps long gone. Selene was gone, dragged into the shadows by hunters. The memory of her calm face as they bound her burned into his mind. Daniel forced himself to sit, every muscle aching. He should have been dead. Yet he was alive again, alive and furious. He rose slowly, leaning on his rifle. The betrayal cut deeper than the wound in his chest. Harris and the others, his own squad, had handed her over. Whether by fear or weakness, it didn't matter. The result was the same. She was captured, and he was left behind. But Daniel was not the kind of man who gave up. He had risked everything to protect her once, and he would do it again. Not because she was alien, not because she was queen, but because she was his responsibility. And because deep inside, he could not accept a world where betrayal won. He scavenged what he could from the ruins. Fresh power cells, grenades, a blade forged for close combat. Then he followed, tracking the hunters through the broken streets. Their trail was easy to see, scorched marks, shattered stone, the heavy imprint of alien boots. Every step he took pushed him deeper into enemy territory. But fear was gone, only resolve remained. By nightfall, he found them. The hunters had taken Selene to a fortified stronghold, a collapsed tower rebuilt into a nest of steel and fire. Energy shields glowed faintly around it. Guards patrolled the perimeter. Daniel crouched in the shadows, studying every movement, every weak point. This was suicide, he knew. But there was no hesitation in his heart. Inside, Selene sat bound in a chamber of cold metal. Her glowing restraints dimmed her power, but not her spirit. She sat tall, her head high, eyes burning. With defiance, her enemies taunted her, calling her fallen queen, mocking her exile. But she gave them no satisfaction, her silence sharper than any blade. Outside, Daniel moved like a ghost, slipping past patrols, silent as the night itself. He cut through wires, set charges, and used every trick war had taught him. He was only One man, but one man with purpose could be deadlier than an army. When the charges blew, the stronghold shuddered. Flames lighting the sky, the guards scattered in confusion, shouts filling the air. Daniel charged in. Rifle blazing, grenades tearing holes through walls. He moved with fury, with precision. Every shot finding its mark, the hunters who had dragged Selene away now faced a storm they never expected. In the chaos, Daniel reached her chamber. Bursting through the door with weapon raised, Selene lifted her head as he entered, shock flickering in her eyes. "You came," she whispered, disbelief mixing with something else, something deeper. Daniel shot the guard holding her, the blast echoing through the chamber. "Of course I came," he said, cutting through her restraints. "Did you really think I'd let them keep you?" The glowing bonds shattered, and Selene's power surged back into her body. Light flared across her skin, her markings blazing like fire. Together, they fought, soldier and queen. Human and alien, side by side, Daniel's rifle thundered. While Selene's energy tore through the hunters, enemies fell, walls crumbled. The stronghold itself shook under their combined fury. At one point, Daniel nearly fell, his ammo spent, a hunter closing in with blade raised. But Selene stepped forward, her hand raised, and the hunter was hurled across the room like a ragdoll. For a moment, their eyes met, human resolve and alien power bound together. Neither spoke, but both understood. They were no longer strangers. By dawn, the stronghold was in ruins, fires burning where walls once stood. The last of the hunters fled into the wastelands, broken and defeated. Daniel leaned on his rifle, breathing hard, his body bruised but unbroken. Selene stood beside him, her glow dimming as exhaustion took hold. "You risked everything," she said softly, her voice carrying both awe and sorrow. "Why?" Daniel gave a tired smile, his eyes steady. "Because that's what humans do," he said simply. "We don't quit, not on each other, not on those who need us." Selene's gaze lingered on him, and in that silence, a bond was forged. Stronger than fear, stronger than betrayal. She was still a queen in exile, hunted by her enemies, burdened by her past. But now she was not alone, and Daniel knew he would fight every battle, cross every ruin, to make sure she stayed alive. The fires of the stronghold still burned behind them, smoke curled into the sky. Carrying the smell of ash and metal, Daniel walked slowly, his steps heavy but steady, Selene beside him, her glow fading as exhaustion dragged at her strength. They had survived the impossible, soldier and queen against an army. But survival was only the beginning. They found shelter in the ruins of a half-collapsed tower. The night sky broken by shattered beams and twisted steel, Daniel leaned against the wall, cleaning his rifle with tired hands. Selene sat across from him, her eyes fixed on the stars, her expression unreadable. For a long while, silence stretched between them, heavy with all that had been left unsaid. At last, Daniel broke it, his voice low. "You should tell me the truth now," he said. "All of it, no more half answers." Selene turned her head, her eyes catching the faint firelight. "You already know much," she replied softly. "But you deserve the rest." She drew a deep breath, her hands tightening in her lap. "I am Selene Arcanase, last of my line, rightful ruler of a people scattered by betrayal," she said. "My enemies are not only hunters, but my own kin. Brothers, cousins once loyal, now driven by greed. They want my throne, my crown, my death." Her voice shook for the first time, though only slightly. "They fear me because I would end this war, because I would choose peace over conquest. And peace would strip them of their power." Daniel listened quietly, his eyes never leaving her face. The truth weighed heavy, but it was not surprising. He had felt it already, in her sorrow, in her strength, in her silence. Still, hearing it laid bare made the danger sharper, more real. "So you're not just any alien," he said slowly. "You're the alien queen." Selene gave a faint, tired smile, though it held no joy. "Yes," she whispered, "the one your people fear. The one my people betrayed. The one the galaxy hunts. Daniel sat back, the words echoing in his mind. The choice before him was clear. Walk away, leave her to her fate, and maybe save himself, or stand by her. Knowing it meant war, danger, and a life with no turning back. You regret saving me, she said quietly, her eyes lowering. Her voice carried no accusation, only weary acceptance. But Daniel shook his head, his voice sharp with certainty. No, he said, not for a second. Her eyes widened slightly, the faintest spark breaking through her mask. Why? She asked, truly asked, her voice trembling in a way he had never heard before. Daniel leaned forward, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze steady. Because you're worth saving, he said simply. Not because you're queen, not because of your power, but because you stood your ground when the world turned against you. Because you didn't break. Because you're still fighting, even now. Selene looked at him, and for the first time, the wall around her cracked, her breath caught, her hands trembling faintly. She had been hunted, betrayed, abandoned by her own blood. But this one human soldier saw her not as a weapon, not as a throne, not as a curse, but as a person. The silence stretched, heavy and fragile. Then softly she asked, "If I asked you to stand with me, not as a soldier, not as a prisoner of fate, but as my ally, would you?" Daniel's answer came without hesitation, his voice firm. "Yes," he said. "I already chose the moment I took that blast for you." Her eyes glistened faintly, though no tears fell. She nodded slowly, her voice steady again. "Then no. This, Daniel. From this moment, your fate is bound to mine. If I fall, you fall. If I rise, you rise with me. Together we may change what no one else dares to change." Daniel gave a tired grin. "Sounds like a fair deal," he said, loading the last charge into his rifle. "Let's change the galaxy then." Outside, the night stretched vast and endless, the stars burning cold above. But within the broken tower, a promise had been forged, not just of survival, not just of alliance, but of something far greater. A connection no betrayal, no army, no throne could destroy. He had taken the blast meant to kill, never knowing it would bind him to a queen. She had found in him what her people had stolen: loyalty, trust, and hope. And together, they would walk into the storm, not as strangers, not as enemies, but as something new, a soldier and a queen. Bound by fate, ready to face a galaxy that had already decided they could not win. But together, they would prove it wrong.